Pat Robertson has passed away at 93 years old. Remembered as a founding leader of the modern Christian right, Robertson became one of the most prominent and influential evangelical Christians in media and politics.
When Pat Robertson died at 93 years old inside his Virginia Beach mansion, his empire stretched across 6 continents. His name was carved into the bedrock of American conservative politics, and his net worth sat comfortably at $100 million. But behind the studio lights and the folded prayer hands, behind the leather-bound Bibles stacked inside his private study, there were secrets buried so deep that his 700 Club audience was never supposed to find them. What they found in the study. David Wilcox was a decorated former police officer from Oceanside, California, who relocated to Virginia Beach with his wife in 1985 to attend graduate school at Regent University, which was founded by Robertson himself. Through a chance connection at the Student Services Office, Wilcox was recruited to serve as Pat Robertson's personal bodyguard, and eventually became the director of security for the entire Christian broadcasting network. He believed in Robertson so deeply that he personally donated $2,500 a year out of his own modest income because he thought the ministry was doing the Lord's work. He watched Operation Blessing deliver hot meals and clean water to hurricane victims long before the government showed up. And he felt genuinely proud to stand beside a man who seemed to be making a real difference in people's lives. When people talk about what was found in Robertson's study, they are not just talking about papers and files. They are talking about the evidence of a double life that lasted over 60 years. A life where the man behind the desk and the man behind the pulpit were 2 entirely different people. Wilcox saw it before anyone else, and his account of the transformation is chilling. And then something shifted, and Wilcox saw it happen in real time. Robertson was riding in the back seat of a company car, trapped between 2 advisors with opposing views. One was urging him to keep the ministry focused on its religious mission, to stay the course, and serve the people who trusted him. The other was pushing hard for something very different, using the ministry's donor lists, its media infrastructure, and its enormous reach as a weapon to build political power. According to Wilcox, Robertson chose politics without hesitation, and from that moment on, the entire operation changed. What had started as a genuine ministry slowly became a political machine, and then it morphed into something even more disturbing, a personal enrichment engine disguised as the work of God. You have to understand the weight of that, because this was a man who sat in a room full of donor files, prayer requests, and financial records, and made the calculated decision to turn every single one of those things into a tool for building his own fortune. What Wilcox later described in his book, Protecting Pat Robertson, Confessions of a High-Priced Bagman, paints a portrait of a man whose private world bore almost no resemblance to the person millions of Americans watched on television every morning. Robertson raised money on air to help cholera victims while reportedly diverting most of those funds to support mining operations nearby. The pattern was always the same: a humanitarian crisis on camera and a business opportunity behind the scenes. 2 CBN lighting technicians were once overheard discussing their boss in a way that no biographer has ever captured better. One of them said, "He listens to the wrong people." The other said, "Anyone can get his ear." And the third observation was the most devastating of all, that he just goes with the last thing he hears. Whether that last thing was a prayer or a profit margin depended entirely on who was standing closest to him at the time. And that tells you everything about the kind of man Pat Robertson really was. The prophecies that never came true. This is where things get really uncomfortable, especially if you ever believed a word this man said on air. Robertson did not just preach the Bible. He claimed to receive direct personal messages from God, and he delivered those messages to millions of viewers as absolute truth. In May of 1980, on a live broadcast of the 700 Club, Robertson looked straight into the camera and told his audience, "I guarantee you by the end of 1982, there is going to be a judgment on the world. That was not a suggestion or a feeling. That was a guarantee, spoken in the name of the Lord. The book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 36, explicitly states that no one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven. Robertson's own guarantee directly contradicted the scripture he claimed to live by. 1982 came and went without any divine judgment. Robertson never acknowledged the failure. He simply moved the goalposts. In his 1990 book, The New Millennium, he set a new date, predicting that the world would be destroyed on the 29th of April, 2007. That date passed quietly too. In January of 2007, he told his audience that God had revealed to him that a massive terrorist attack would hit the United States that year, possibly killing millions of Americans. When nothing happened, Robertson explained it away by saying that perhaps the prayers of the faithful had convinced God to change his mind. And you really need to sit with the audacity of that logic, because if your prophecy comes true, God spoke through you, and if it fails, the prayers of others overruled God's own plan. Either way, Robertson was never wrong. In 2020, Robertson told his viewers that God had personally revealed to him that Donald Trump would win re-election. He stated on air, without any hesitation at all, "First of all, I want to say without question, Trump is going to win the election." Trump lost. Robertson then supported claims that the election had been stolen and prophesied that God would miraculously intervene through the Supreme Court to keep Trump in power. That intervention never came either. In 2011, Robertson was actually awarded the Ig Nobel Prize in Mathematics, a satirical award given for, and this is the real citation, teaching the world to be careful when making mathematical assumptions and calculations. And the most staggering part of all of this is that on a separate 2011 broadcast, Robertson looked at a viewer and warned them to be careful of false prophets, as if the irony did not apply to him at all. God's punisher. The failed prophecies were disturbing enough on their own, but Robertson also used his claimed divine authority to inflict something much worse on people who were already suffering. When a catastrophic earthquake struck Haiti on the 12th of January 2010, killing over 220,000 people and reducing Port-au-Prince to rubble, Robertson went on the 700 Club and told his audience that the Haitian people had brought the disaster on themselves. He referenced the slave revolt of 1804 and claimed that enslaved Haitians had made a literal pact with the devil in exchange for their freedom from French colonialism. He told his viewers, they got together and swore a pact to the devil. They said, "We will serve you if you will get us free from the French." True story. And so the devil said, "Okay, it is a deal." He then added that ever since, they have been cursed by one thing after another. After Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans in 2005, Pat Robertson suggested on air that the disaster reflected God's judgment on America's abortion policies. Earlier, in 1998, when Orlando announced events for gay and lesbian families at Walt Disney World, he warned the city that it was in the path of destructive hurricanes and criticized what he viewed as defiance of God's will. In January 2006, after Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon suffered a massive stroke, Robertson claimed it was divine punishment for Sharon's withdrawal from Gaza. He also referenced the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, implying both events reflected God's judgment. Those remarks drew widespread condemnation, with the White House publicly criticizing Robertson and the Israeli government cutting ties with him. Robertson also faced criticism for his 1991 bestseller, The New World Order. Reviewers, including critics from the New York Review of Books and the Anti-Defamation League, argued that the book echoed discredited anti-Semitic conspiracy theories found in earlier writings by Nesta Webster. Critics also noted similarities in language and themes that resembled long-standing anti-Semitic tropes, leading to significant public backlash. In August of 2005, Robertson told his 700 Club audience that the United States government should assassinate Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. He said on air, "We have the ability to take him out, and I think the time has come that we exercise that ability." He initially tried to deny having said it, then he apologized, and then he went on Fox News and said it again, clarifying, "Not now, but one day." And perhaps the most personally cruel moment of his entire career came in September of 2011, when a viewer called into the 700 Club asking for advice about a friend whose wife had developed Alzheimer's disease. Robertson told millions of people watching at home that Alzheimer's was a kind of death, and that the man should divorce his wife and start all over again. His own co-host, Terry Mewson, was visibly stunned on air. Senior pastor Joel Hunter of the 15,000-member Northland Church in Orlando said he was flabbergasted and could not understand how anyone reading scripture could reach that conclusion. Robertson later claimed his words were misinterpreted, but millions of people heard exactly what he said, and no amount of backtracking could undo it. Now that you understand the kind of man who was operating behind the pulpit, the financial scandals that follow will make a very different kind of sense. Blood diamonds and a dictator's blessing. In 1994, the Rwandan genocide killed an estimated 800,000 people, and 1 million survivors fled across the border into Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where they huddled in refugee camps with no shelter, no clean water, and almost no medicine. Robertson saw an opportunity. He went on the 700 Club and made emotional, tearful appeals for viewers to donate to Operation Blessing, his nonprofit humanitarian organization. He promised every dollar would go directly to saving lives. What his viewers did not know was that Robertson had already set up a personal for-profit company called the African Development Corporation, registered in Bermuda, and had secured diamond mining concessions from Zaire's dictator, Mobutu Sese Seko, one of Africa's most brutal and corrupt rulers. The mining site was located near the town of Kamonia, on the far opposite side of the country from the refugee crisis. Robert Hinkle, the chief pilot for Operation Blessing in Zaire, later gave testimony that instead of transporting humanitarian aid, he was ordered to haul 1,000-pound mining dredges, fuel drums, vehicles, and supplies to Robertson's private diamond mining operation. Of the 40 flights Hinkle flew in Zaire, filmmakers David Turner and Lara Zizek calculated that only about 44 hours were spent on humanitarian work, while over 270 hours were spent transporting mining equipment. Hinkle was so revolted by what he saw that he physically had the Operation Blessing logo removed from his aircraft. And his personal flight notes from one trip where Robertson himself was on board contained a single entry that read, "Prayed for diamonds." The entire mining venture turned out to be a colossal failure, staffed by a cast of characters that included a defrocked preacher and a convicted felon from the Reagan-era HUD scandal. One insider estimated that the total diamond output was worth less than $10,000. But the damage to the credibility of the humanitarian mission was already done. The warlord's lobby man. Robertson's relationship with African strongmen did not end with Mobutu. In 1999, he established a new company called Freedom Gold Limited and signed a mining concession agreement with Liberian President Charles Taylor, a dictator who had been trained by Muammar Gaddafi, had escaped from a United States prison, and had fought his way to power through a civil war so brutal that the United Nations eventually indicted him for 11 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Taylor directed the Revolutionary United Front in Sierra Leone, a rebel group that became globally infamous for systematically amputating the hands and feet of thousands of civilians, including children, and whose diamond trade was linked to the funding of Al-Qaeda. While holding this gold mining deal, Robertson used the 700 Club to defend Taylor's regime on American television. He blamed the crisis in Liberia not on Taylor, but on the State Department, and he even suggested that the State Department should be destroyed. During Taylor's war crimes trial at The Hague in 2010, Taylor testified under oath that Robertson had volunteered to lobby the Bush administration on his behalf, and that Robertson had spoken directly to President George W. Bush in support of the Taylor government. When prosecutors asked Taylor if he had told Robertson that he could count on him to get Washington on his side, Taylor confirmed it. The Liberian legislature had actually refused to ratify the mining agreement, raising serious doubts about whether Taylor ever had the legal authority to grant the concession in the first place. How donations built a billion-dollar fortune. The money trail behind all of these ventures leads back to one place: the donations of ordinary Americans who thought they were giving to God. Robertson built the Christian Broadcasting Network from a bankrupt television station he purchased in Portsmouth, Virginia in 1960, using nothing but viewer pledges to keep it alive. By 1977, he had launched a satellite cable channel that became one of the first of its kind in the country, eventually renamed the Family Channel, which reached nearly 60 million homes and became the seventh largest cable network in America, when the channel became so profitable that it risked IRS scrutiny. Because a non-profit's business operations cannot legally outgrow the non-profit itself, Robertson and his son Tim quietly purchased the Family Channel from CBN for just $183,000. 2 years later, they took it public and personally walked away with approximately $90 million. James Dunn of the Baptist Joint Committee on Public Affairs said Robertson went from ministry to marketing with very few pangs of conscience. In 1997, Robertson sold the Family Channel to Rupert Murdoch for approximately $1.9 billion. Robertson's biographer, David John Marley, called this the biggest scandal in the entire story of Pat Robertson, writing that he raised millions of dollars from his viewers, most of whom were elderly, and then took their money to create a business worth almost $2 billion. And what was most surprising was that nobody cared. Robertson also used CBN donor mailing lists to launch Calovita, a pyramid-style vitamin sales company that collapsed in 1992. A former CBN executive named Mark Barth filed a lawsuit alleging he was fired for trying to stop improper financial transfers between CBN and Robertson's for-profit companies, and that Robertson's son, Tim, ordered him to destroy documents in case there was ever a government investigation. The senator's son who ran from war. Even the origin story was fabricated. Robertson spent decades calling himself a combat veteran of the Korean War, and the CBN website described his service in language that painted him as a battle-hardened Marine, referencing grueling marches, bayonet combat, and the bitterly cold terrain of North Korea. He claimed 3 battle stars, but fellow Marine and future Republican Congressman Paul McCloskey, who boarded the USS Breckinridge alongside Robertson in January of 1951, told a very different story. When the ship stopped in Japan, Robertson was pulled off the vessel and never continued to Korea. McCloskey's single most vivid memory was Robertson standing on the dock at Kobe, grinning and telling the men heading into combat, "So long, you guys. Good luck," before explaining that his father, Senator A. Willis Robertson, had gotten him out of combat duty. Fellow Marine John Gearhart confirmed the account, and documentary evidence later revealed that the senator had actually written a thank you letter to the Marine Commandant for arranging his son's removal. When McCloskey made these allegations public during the 1988 presidential campaign, Robertson did not just deny them. He filed 2 separate $35 million libel suits. But the day before the trial was set to begin, Robertson quietly dropped the lawsuits and later paid McCloskey's court costs. He also claimed on the CBN website that he could leg press 2,000 pounds, a feat that would have shattered the world record by over 600 pounds, and he tied the claim to a sales pitch for his age-defying protein shake sold through GNC stores. Strength training experts called it physically impossible, and the photo CBN released as proof carried a date stamp from 1994, even though they claimed the lift happened in 2003. The man who was buried on the grounds of the Christian Broadcasting Network, in front of the very studio where he told millions of people he spoke directly to God, left behind not a theology but a template. He proved that a charismatic figure with a camera and a tax exemption could build a political machine, a media empire, and a personal fortune simultaneously, all while telling ordinary people that every dollar they sent was going straight to the Lord. This is the story they never wanted anyone to hear. And now that you know it, drop your thoughts in the comments on whether Pat Robertson was a man of God or a man of greed, because the evidence speaks louder than any prophecy he ever made.